In the small town where everyone knew each other, Megan's family was known for a peculiar reason. They owned the only local funeral home. Megan, a 22-year-old woman, grew up under the shadow of this family legacy, feeling the weight of dealing with death from a very young age. The funeral home was located in an old building, with exposed brick and tall windows. The interior was decorated with soft tones and dark wooden furniture, creating a solemn and respectful atmosphere. Megan spent her childhood playing in the silent corridors, watching her father and grandfather care for the deceased with dignity and compassion. Despite the somber nature of the family business, Megan was a young woman of delicate beauty. Her expressive eyes were framed by long lashes. Her long hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her skin had a healthy glow. However, her attractive appearance was often overshadowed by the stigma associated with her family's profession. Since childhood, Megan faced prejudice from the town's residents. The other children called her Death Girl and avoided playing with her. The adults kept a respectful distance, as if proximity to the funeral home family could attract bad luck. This atmosphere of social isolation followed Megan throughout her life, deeply affecting her self-esteem and interpersonal relationships. The only person who seemed immune to this stigma was Lauren, Megan's best friend. The two grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and moments of joy. Lauren was the opposite of Megan in many ways, outgoing, popular, and always surrounded by admirers. Megan listened with fascination to the stories of Lauren's romantic encounters, living vicariously through her friends' experiences. While Lauren enjoyed a bustling social life, Megan devoted herself to her studies and work at the funeral home. She learned all aspects of the business, from providing compassionate care for grieving families to the technical procedures of body preparation. Despite her professional competence, Megan harbored a secret dream to become a doula and help bring new lives into the world instead of dealing with the end of them. Christmas Eve arrived, bringing with it the promise of family warmth and celebration. Megan's parents' house was decorated with garlands, twinkling lights, and a majestic pine tree in the corner of the room. The aroma of roasted turkey and apple pie filled the air, mingling with the scent of scented candles. Megan descended the stairs wearing a red dress that accentuated her slender figure. Her hair was elegantly styled, with a few strands framing her face. She smiled as she saw her family gathered in the living room, chatting animatedly and exchanging gifts. The moment of joy was interrupted by the shrill ringing of the phone. Megan's father answered, his expression quickly changing to a serious one. After a brief conversation, he turned to his daughter. "Megan, the body of an elderly gentleman is going to arrive. We'll work on him tomorrow. Just place him in one of the cold drawers in the preparation room," said her father. "Don't forget that the lock on that room is broken, so keep the door open to avoid getting trapped in there," he warned. Megan let out a resigned sigh. She was already used to having her family moments interrupted by work. She grabbed her coat over the red dress, swapped her festive shoes for comfortable boots, and took the car keys. The vehicle Megan drove was a special model, adapted for the transportation of coffins. It was a long, black and discreet car, with tinted windows and a spacious interior. Despite its somber function, the car was well maintained and comfortable. As she drove through the empty city streets, illuminated only by the Christmas lights, Megan reflected on her life. She felt the weight of family tradition on her shoulders, but also longed for something more. The dream of becoming a doula seemed increasingly distant, buried under her parents' expectations and the limitations of the small town. Arriving at the funeral home, Megan parked in the back and entered the building. The silence was absolute, broken only by the echo of her footsteps in the empty hallways. She turned on the lights, revealing the familiar interior of the funeral home. The walls were a soft beige tone, decorated with discreet paintings of serene landscapes. The dark wooden furniture gave the environment an air of sobriety. Megan headed to the preparation room, a spacious and aseptic area equipped with stainless steel tables and refrigerated drawers for storing bodies. The smell of cleaning products and formaldehyde hung in the air, an odor Megan was so accustomed to that she barely noticed it anymore. She prepared one of the drawers to receive the body of the elderly man, checking the temperature and arranging the white sheet with precision. The sound of the arriving ambulance interrupted her thoughts. Megan went to the entrance to receive the body. The ambulance driver, a middle-aged man whom Megan had known for years, greeted her with a nod. Together, they pushed the stretcher with the elderly man's body to the preparation room. It was then that Megan noticed a third person, a young man who was closely following them. "This is Dennis," said the ambulance driver. "He is a relative of the deceased and came to accompany the body." Megan looked at Dennis and felt something she had never experienced before. He was tall, with broad shoulders and striking features. His eyes were a deep blue, and his dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it several times in a gesture of nervousness. Dennis seemed equally surprised to see Megan. His eyes widened slightly, and he opened his mouth as if to say something, but no sound came out. The moment of tension was broken by the ambulance driver, who asked Megan to sign some documents. As Megan accompanied the driver back to the ambulance, Dennis remained waiting in the preparation room. She closed the funeral home door and returned, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and curiosity. "I'm sorry for your loss," said Megan, her professional voice masking her nervousness. "But I need you to sign some documents and make some choices regarding the preparation of the body." Dennis nodded, his expression a mix of sadness and something Megan couldn't decipher. "All right, whatever it takes," he replied, his voice hoarse and soft. As they went to leave the room, Megan realized with horror that she had accidentally closed the door to the prep room. Remembering her father's warning about the broken lock, she felt a chill in her stomach. "Oh my God, we're trapped in here," Megan said, her voice trembling slightly. Dennis tried to open the door, but to no avail. "What will we do now?" he asked, turning to Megan with a worried expression. Megan explained the situation, feeling extremely embarrassed. She had left her phone in the administration office, and Dennis informed her that his was in the car. They were completely isolated. "I'm sorry, but we'll have to wait," said Megan, finally raising her eyes and looking directly at Dennis. "Soon my family should notice my delay and come to see what's happening." The silence that followed was tense and uncomfortable. Dennis sat on the floor next to the door, and Megan, after a moment of hesitation, did the same, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm so sorry to make you go through this at such a sensitive time of loss and suffering," said Megan, trying to break the ice. Dennis sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Actually, I barely know this uncle of mine," he confessed. For many years he had isolated himself from the family, and almost no one had contact with him. But this year he accepted my family's invitation and came to spend Christmas with us. No one expected that just a few hours before dinner he would pass away sitting in the living room's armchair. It fell to me to accompany the body. Megan nodded, understanding. She was used to dealing with different reactions to grief, and Dennis's frankness surprised her. After another moment of silence, Dennis spoke again. "I must say I was surprised," he began, hesitantly. "For such a young woman, and so delicate to be working in a funeral home." Megan blushed at the comment. She briefly explained about the family business and how she grew up in that environment. "And you?" asked Megan, curious. "I know everyone in town and I've never seen you around here." Dennis smiled, a gesture that lit up his face and made Megan's heart race. "My parents recently bought a house in the town after retiring," he explained. "They wanted a quieter environment to live in during their retirement. I still live in the capital, where I work as a physiotherapist." From there, the conversation flowed naturally. Dennis talked about his life in the big city, his work with athletes, and his passion for helping people recover from injuries. Megan, in turn, shared stories about growing up in a small town and the challenges of dealing with the stigma associated with her family's business. "How do you feel dealing with death every day?" Dennis asked, his tone genuinely curious. Megan reflected for a moment before responding. "I understand death as the natural cycle of life," she said softly. Thinking about death should not be something to depress people, but rather motivate them to live with more intensity and love each day, because you never know when it will knock at our door. Dennis looked at her with admiration. "That is a perspective I had never considered," he said, impressed. Encouraged by Dennis's positive reaction, Megan decided to share something more personal. "But even though death is something I've learned to deal with in my life, my great dream was to work bringing life," she confessed. "I studied to be a doula, helping pregnant women bring their little treasures into the world. In fact, my best friend invited me to work and live with her in the capital. But you know how it is. My parents want me to continue with the family legacy, to carry on with the funeral home." Dennis listened attentively, his eyes fixed on Megan. "My parents were successful lawyers and wanted me to become a lawyer too," he shared. "But during college I was an athlete, and when a serious injury prevented me from pursuing a professional career, I found inspiration for my life in being able to help other athletes continue following their dreams in sports. Bringing hope to people as a physiotherapist is my inspiration in life. My advice is that you follow what inspires your life." Dennis's words touched Megan deeply. For the first time, she felt understood and supported in her dreams. The conversation continued, covering various topics from their experiences in college to their favorite movies and books. Laughter echoed through the preparation room, an unusual sound in that normally solemn environment. During the conversation, Megan discovered that Dennis lived in the neighborhood next to her friend Lauren's in the capital. Megan's eyes lit up. "Really? What a coincidence! If you ever go there, let's go out for coffee together for sure," Dennis suggested, his tone casual, but his eyes revealing a thinly veiled hope. Before Megan could respond, the sound of the door opening interrupted the conversation. It was Megan's father, who, noticing his daughter's delay, had gone to the funeral home to check if everything was okay. The magical moment that Megan and Dennis had shared was abruptly broken by reality. They stood up, adjusting their clothes and trying to mask how involved they were with each other. As they said goodbye, Megan and Dennis exchanged a handshake that lasted a little longer than necessary. Their eyes met, silently communicating a connection that went beyond that chance encounter. Megan returned home, still feeling the echo of the conversations and laughter she had shared with Dennis. She sat at the table for Christmas dinner, but her thoughts were wandering, distant from the celebration around her. For the first time, she had been treated without the burden of the stigma of being from the funeral home family. For the first time, a young man had looked at her with sweetness and romance, as if he saw who she really was. And for the first time, Megan felt that following her dreams was not just a daydream, but a real possibility. While her family's laughter filled the room, a part of her remained in that funeral home room, where something profoundly transforming had begun. In the days that followed, Megan and Dennis remained in contact, exchanging phone calls and messages that ranged from casual conversations to deep reflections about life. With every word exchanged, Megan felt her heart race, something she used to experience only when sighing over the romances she read or listening to the love stories Lauren shared with her. Now she sighed at the possibility of living her own love story, something that, for the first time, seemed within her reach. It was then that Megan made a decision that would change the course of her life. She spoke with her parents, explaining her dreams and desires. Though initially reluctant, they eventually understood and supported her decision. A few weeks after Christmas, Megan packed her bags and left for the capital. She accepted her friend Lauren's invitation to live and work with her as a doula. The move was scary, but also exciting. For the first time in her life, Megan felt that she was following her own path. And then, on a sunny afternoon while walking through the busy streets of the capital, Megan heard a familiar voice calling her name. She turned around, and there was Dennis, smiling that smile that had lit up the funeral home that Christmas night. "How about that coffee I promised?" he asked, his eyes shining with the same intensity that Megan remembered. From that encounter, Megan and Dennis began to meet frequently. Initially, they were casual outings, a coffee at a charming corner cafe, a walk through the park while they talked about their dreams and stories. Dennis spoke about the fascination he felt helping people recover and how much he admired Megan's courage for seeking her happiness. Each conversation seemed to unravel the layers of insecurity that Megan had carried for years. Dennis made her feel seen, not as the funeral home girl, but as someone unique, full of dreams and light. One day, while they were walking through a garden filled with flowers in full bloom of spring, Dennis stopped abruptly. The wind played with Megan's hair, and the sun bathed her face in a golden glow. He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Megan, do you have any idea how amazing you are?" he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Megan felt her face flush, but before she could reply, Dennis stepped forward, gently holding her face with his hands. The first kiss happened there, surrounded by the scent of flowers and the sound of birds in the background. Dennis's lips were soft, and his touch conveyed a mix of security and passion that made her feel like never before. Megan felt as if the entire world had stopped at that moment, and for the first time, her heart seemed to beat in harmony with the life she so desired to live. At that moment, Megan realized that her heart was no longer tied to the past. She no longer lived in the shadow of small-town stigmas. She was living her own experiences and stories. As the months passed, Megan devoted herself more and more to her new life. Working as a doula, she found a purpose that illuminated her days. Each birth she helped bring into the world was a reminder of how beautiful and full of meaning life could be. For the first time, Megan was living fully, no longer from the stories of others, but from her own. No longer dealing with death, but celebrating life in its purest form. And so, Megan realized that that first kiss was not just the beginning of a love story, but also proof that life always surprises us when we least expect it. Just as Dennis appeared in an unlikely place, in the loneliness of a funeral home on Christmas night, happiness can also bloom where we least imagine. Sometimes it takes courage to open new doors, to step out of our comfort zone, and to follow our dreams, even when the path seems daunting. And for Megan, the true lesson was understanding that although death is part of the cycle of life, it is in love and fulfilled dreams that we find the moments that truly make us feel alive. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.